Welcome to We Chat Divorce, hosted by Karen Shalhoub, Legal Liaison, and Catherine Shanahan, CDFA. Each episode, we sit down with divorce professionals and industry experts to provide insights and frank discussions about real people, real situations, and real divorce to help you achieve your best life post-divorce. This episode of We Chat Divorce is brought to you by My Divorce Solution, offering divorce financial planning so clients can secure the divorce settlement they deserve. Visit mydivorcesolution.com to request access.
High conflict divorces don't just drain your bank account, they drain your sense of self. When you've spent years walking on eggshells, people pleasing, and trying to keep the peace, divorce can feel terrifying instead of freeing. Welcome back to We Chat Divorce, brought to you by My Divorce Solution. I'm Karen Shalhoub, Legal Liaison, helping you navigate the legal complexities of divorce with clarity and confidence.
And I'm Catherine Shanahan, Certified Divorce Financial Analyst, and your partner in long-term financial security. At MDS, we believe preparation isn't just about documents and numbers. It's about strategy, mindset, and understanding the full financial impact of all of your decisions. You said something above, Karen. You said walking on eggshells, and my gosh, it brought me back to my first marriage. I mean, constantly I felt like I was walking on eggshells. It's a terrible feeling, right? Because you just don't know at any given moment what an outburst could be.
Yeah. And then if you develop a professional team in your divorce that's very similar to your spouse, you continue to walk on eggshells because that's how they manage those relationships, whether you're an attorney or a spouse. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. But I think this conversation is really important for people to listen to, especially in these high conflict situations, because unpacking the emotion from the transaction is really, really important, especially for high conflict divorces.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you're probably feeling like you're frozen or you're exhausted or you're unable to trust yourself anymore or anyone around you. So this conversation was good because she did really bring out some tips to make you realize that you're normal. There's nothing wrong with you, right? You're a victim of this personality trait, and there is a way out. Of course, it's always going to come to financial clarity from our lens. But she adds a great perspective and she has a great program, it sounds like.
Yeah, for sure. Because to your point, what most people don't realize is that high conflict divorces often follow predictable patterns, especially when narcissistic or toxic dynamics are involved.
Yeah, it's a good conversation. So stick around and hopefully you get something great out of it.
Let's welcome our guest, Victoria McCooey. Victoria, welcome to We Chat Divorce.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here today.
And we're excited to have you here for sure. And for our listeners, Victoria McCooey is a nationally recognized high conflict divorce coach, certified divorce mediator, and the author of So I Married a Narcissist. With the decades of experience helping survivors of domestic and emotional abuse, Victoria specializes in supporting women divorcing narcissistic or toxic partners, guiding them through one of the most emotionally and legally complex experiences of their lives. After surviving her own escape from a narcissistic marriage, Victoria turned her experience into purpose. She created the Reclaim Your Power system, a results-driven framework that has helped thousands of people break free from abuse, reclaim their voice, and build a bold new life. She also leads She Breaks Free, a weekly online support circle for women divorcing narcissists. And Victoria, I believe you're known for your compassionate but no-nonsense guidance, what so many of us need.
I get chills hearing that. This is like a dream come true. Like my whole life, I thought I had a calling. I was a writer before I started this coaching business. And I never really felt that passion that other people feel about their careers. I was okay at it. I made a career out of it. Everything was fine. But This I find is a whole different beast. This is a passion that I never understood what other people were talking about before when they would tell me they were so passionate about their work. I had to go through a horrible, hellish experience to find my passion. So this all came from being in a time and place where there was no information, and I didn't even understand what it was I was in, or we didn't even use the word narcissist back then. Like nobody even knew what that meant. Some mythological figure, like it wasn't used like it is now. And believe it or not, I was trying to leave during a time when I live in New York. New York was not a no-fault state, and I was told by several attorneys that I didn't have grounds for divorce. So I came from a place of feeling completely hopeless and trapped. And I now am determined for no one to ever feel that way again.
Yeah, and that's where we come into on the financial side, because so many women in particular do feel trapped because they don't have the financial independence that they long for. And it's really hard to get that when you've never had it and you're in these 20, 30-year marriages. You're too ashamed or you're embarrassed because you're now 50 something years old and you're trying to get educated. So we like to have our space where it's judgment free. We go through your cash flow and your assets and your debts, and there's no judgment. It's a great place to start gaining your independence.
Yeah, we'll talk about ashamed. I too run up against a lot of women who have been stay-at-home moms, haven't worked in 20 years, have no income or no access to finances. But that wasn't me. I earned a living. I was gaslighted into believing, like, why would you think your own husband would lie to you about this, right? Into believing that he earned more money than I did. And it was never true. He owned real estate, but it was so leveraged that it was basically a very expensive hobby that he had. And I was the whole support for our family, but I was told that what I did was negligible compared to what he did. So I never felt like I had any control over anything. And he would intercept the money that was supposed to come to me from my work. And I didn't have access to the money I made. So how embarrassing for me, for someone like me. Well, I always tell the people who come to me, call me clients, or just people who book calls with me all week long, that we're all alike. The people who end up in these relationships with narcissistic men, just like they're all alike, they have a manual they follow, they're very predictable that way. We're also alike in that we wouldn't have stayed as long as we did if we weren't so strong and determined to fix everything and to make it work. Like we're used to figuring things out. We don't give up and we keep on trying to get what we think looks like success, like a successful family or a marriage or so yeah, that is what hurts us the most. Our ambition and our drive and our need to succeed and our need to be successful at making your marriage work.
Hmm. Yeah, that was my case for sure. 23 years. I thought I would change him. We didn't use the narcissistic word, right? It was more of emotional abuse is all I could think of, right? That was the word. And you do think when they're nice and they're doing kind things that maybe they're changing, but they're not. And so you take it until you just can't take it anymore.
Yeah. And even when I couldn't take it anymore, I couldn't get out. I was told I couldn't leave. Legally, I couldn't leave.
And then, people believe that they're going to find relief in the court system.
Right.
And, we're told that that's justice, right? But what they find is a lot of times people, if they're disentangling from a narcissist, they go hire a narcissistic attorney, right? Because that's where they feel comfortable. But they also don't realize that the legal industry or the court system in and of itself needs to hear the information in a different way. They need to hear the transaction. And a lot of people are so looking to have their story heard, that it's not translated well in the divorce process. And then they don't have anything to stand on because they don't know the financial transaction. And that's why Catherine and I are so passionate, to your point, about what we do, because that is a game changer.
Yeah. Yeah, I always say it's the perfect storm. You are at your absolute lowest point of your life. You've been in an abusive relationship, emotional abuse, financial abuse, if not physical abuse, and you are compromised. And that is the very moment where you have to present your best self, right? In a custody battle or, just showing up in court. It's almost undoable. And so that's why it's so important to get some help beforehand to try to start the healing process to, my program's called Reclaim Your Power, to reclaim that power that's been stripped away from you and compromised in you so that you can put your best foot forward, you can show up in the right way. And to your point about telling your story, that's a big one for people to get over, that they're not going to have that moment in court where everyone points at the narcissist and goes, it's you, you're the bad one, it's all your fault, and they get
Mhm.
punished and you should owe her $1 million for what you did to her. No, it's never going to be that. And it's hard to let go of that dream of getting your vindication.
Yeah. If you're a victim of a narcissistic spouse and your program is called
Reclaim your power.
Reclaim Your Power, how long does it take someone to reclaim their power?
Well, that's just it. We don't have years because if we're either in a very compromising situation, you need to get out. But also, if one of you is filed, now you're on the clock. Like, we don't have time to do years of healing and therapy and all these things. So, we have to get moving on the business part of getting a divorce. So I call it the two silos. There are two different buckets here of what we have to work on. We have to work on you changing your mindset, understanding what's happened to you, understanding how they were able to do this to you, reclaiming all your power, your ability to get the best outcome here, while you're doing the business of gathering documents, of showing up to hearings, of documenting, all the things that go on during a divorce. So we can't do everything in one silo before we start the other silo. So it's like a toggle, in my program, we go back and forth. It's like we work on the mindset, then we work on some of the business, and we work on the mindset, and we work on some of the business. So it's never going to be done. We're never going to be done healing completely, or we can always be better, right? So there's no end date for that. So we have to do it while we're working on the divorce.
Yeah. Do you notice a lot of your clients hire narcissistic attorneys?
It's two extremes. Well, maybe all attorneys are two extremes. I don't know, but they either hire the narcissistic attorney thinking that no one else would be able to go up against their spouse, right? That they need someone like that, or they go to someone who's just very nurturing and consoling and soft and gentle, and because they just need to be heard and think that someone's going to take care of them. Um, Neither one is a good reason for hiring an attorney, right?
Right. Right.
But I see the two extremes happen.
Mm-hmm.
So, Victoria, I know you do a lot of mediation as well. So, how important is it that, from your lens, that both spouses come to the mediation with financial clarity?
Well, there's no reason to even go to the mediation if you don't know what you're mediating on, right? It's not,
Amen.
right?
Can we repeat that?
100%.
Let's repeat that because if you missed it,
What are you mediating on who was right and who was wrong, who's right, like, well, what are we mediating? We're never going to agree on whose fault it is, and that's not what we're doing in mediation. This is not placing blame. That is not ever going to happen. You're never going to get to an end where you agree on whose fault it is. So mediation is just about, here are the marital assets, how are we splitting them up? And how are we co-parenting our kids, and where are they going to be and when? and who's going to meet their financial needs. That's it. We're just trying to divide this marital pot in a logical way that's fair. So if you don't know what that is, why even go?
Yeah, exactly.
So, Victoria, you talk about the emotional and legal traps that narcissistic partners set during divorce. What are those?
Gosh, so I mean, everything they do is a trap. They in parenting, they don't co-parent, right? They'll counter-parent. If you have a plan or an agenda, they will sabotage it, right? They're going to do whatever it is to throw you off. So that's a trap. That's why we don't tell them anything we don't have to tell them because it's just giving them ammunition to ruin it for you. Um, so we only do what we're required to by law. We only tell them what we absolutely have to tell. We don't say, I wish you would, the kids would love it if you, there's no emotion, right? It's just about soccer, 3 p.m., this is the place, if it changed. Otherwise, you don't tell them anything you don't have to tell them. They're grown people. They're supposed to be able to do that on their own. That's another hard one I find women. I know I'm going off track now, but women who have been managing their husband's parenting for so many years have a hard time. It's like, well, he won't know what to do. He won't know where to go. He won't know. Let him not know. Let him fail. Like it's not your job anymore to manage them. So they're helping their adversary, right? They're fighting for custody, but it's like, well, I don't want the kids to be disappointed. It's like, well, the kids are going to meet the real father momentarily, right? You can't keep doing this forever. So why not break it off now while it's going to help you?
I was guilty of that, definitely. I was totally guilty of that. I just thought it made everyone's life easier. And then finally, I was like, okay, you've lost your right for me to do all this stuff for you now. Yeah, it took a while though.
Even if you do it, they'll turn it against you somehow, right? So there is no favor. There is no, they'll want you to trade, they'll want you to change. And if you do, then the goalpost moves, right? And then it's like, oh, I didn't say that, or I didn't mean that, or well, now it's this. And you just open yourself up to more abuse. The more information they have, the more access they have to you, the more likely they are to use it to further the abuse. Now, they can't stand not having that control over you. So they'll find any way they can. A lot of times the only thing left is the kids. Well, during the divorce, it's finances, right? They'll hide documents. They won't turn over discovery. This is how they control the situation. Part of that, we can't fix that. We have to know that this is what they will do because that's all they have left as a way to hurt you.
Right. And kind of stay the course, right? Yeah.
Yeah, you have to
Yeah.
stay the course. You have to, instead of being victimized all over again, that's how I try to help them shift their mindset around this. Oh, he did. Can you believe it? He did this. He's not hiding this. He's not doing this. Like, so instead of feeling like a victim about it, you go, well, of course he did. Of course he did. So we let him show who he is. Let him do this and see what happens. Like, the court will know he didn't turn over the documents. We'll see how it plays out. Find a way to use this to our advantage. Maybe you have to subpoena things. Maybe it becomes longer and more expensive, but he's showing who he is. He's not forthcoming. He's deceptive. He's disingenuous, all these things. So instead of feeling like a victim, see it as something that might help you in the big picture.
I was having a conversation with a client last week whose husband is a narcissist, and she had no access to the marital funds, had no idea how much money they had, and they're very high net worth. But so he's tasked with paying all the children's expenses. And so she was saying to me that she let him know that a bill needed to be paid. And his retort back to her was, I'm only a checkbook to you. And it made her feel so bad. And, it's kind of in that same vein. It didn't matter what she would have said in that communication. there was something that could be set back that would just trigger her feeling bad. And I think that's what we're all talking about, that people experience during the divorce process, that on some level, it's whatever you say, they're going to have a response back that's going to be hurtful to you if you allow that to be.
Right. Now, look, I know that a lot of times the women in the relationship is the bad guy. I'm not saying this is across the board, but my clients are married to these toxic people, and typically they're really empathetic, caregiving type people. They're people pleasers, or they wouldn't have been in this dynamic, right? So that's why I'm making these blanket statements about, not to give them access. And, these are guardrails that you can put up when you do have a toxic spouse like this to keep them from being able to infect you again with all the
I,
negativity.
and when they say like I'm just a checkbook to you, you don't respond, but in your head you can say, yeah, that's exactly what I need you to be, a checkbook.
And sometimes they go,
Don't
oh,
take it personally.
yeah, either don't respond or we come up with just those rote phrases, like if it's an Our Family Wizard and you feel like, oh, if I don't respond, it's like, say noted, like
Yeah,
whatever.
noted. I like that one too. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and things like that, like they'll control you through Our Family. Some of them I see, they can't even control themselves when they know it's an exhibit. It's destined to become an exhibit in a court filing, right? It's like they can't even help themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So Victoria, what deposition defense, what does that mean when facing a narcissistic spouse?
Wow. So when you go into a deposition or a four-way conference or anytime you're face to face at a table with your abusive partner, you are so triggered. As someone who was in a very long, toxic, abusive marriage, the sight of him, he could look at me in a way that made me shake with fear, right? So, I mean, my husband ultimately choked me. I had every reason to be afraid of him. He was like really, really abusive. So I just remember that feeling of just the sight of him or the words, or we call it dog whistling. They'll say something that only means something to you. So to the rest of the room, it's benign. I had a client who had this, he called her, I don't want to say her name. He called her a nickname of her name that she hated, and he knew she hated it. So he started calling, okay, say it was me and my name's Victoria, and he was calling me Vicky, say. So he starts calling her Vicky, and the whole room starts calling her Vicky now. And now every time she goes to court, everyone's calling her Vicky, and she hates it, and he knows it. Now, she didn't want to seem like whatever. She was too shy to speak up and say, "Oh, I really don't like that." She was already in such a compromised state. She didn't want to say anything about it, but it lingered on and on for years and during this divorce. So that's
Wow.
like dog whistling.
Mm, mm.
Wow. That's so true.
Yeah. So back to the deposition. So it's playing out all these scenarios ahead of time. Not just knowing the numbers and knowing what the answers are that you want to give and rehearsing and being prepared for your own deposition and being prepared to hear him lie during his deposition. But it's having the right demeanor and preparing mentally and physically, sleeping and exercising and getting up early that day and knowing what you're going to wear and getting there early and, all the things that you can do to feel regulated. There are tricks I have for like in the middle if you're feeling upset, going to the bathroom and doing some exercise in the bathroom that gets you back on track. But being prepared with all this stuff.
Yeah, I tell people to do that all the time. I can remember just looking in the mirror, looking in your own eyes, and I would just say, Catherine, you are going to be okay. And I would just hold my face and just say, Catherine, there's something really powerful about looking deep into your own eyes in a mirror to get that strength to deal with it because it's hard.
Right.
It's really
But
hard.
I always think back to where I was when I was where they are. And I was so fragile. And I think of myself as a pretty strong person. I was before this marriage and I am again now. So I've reclaimed my power. But during that time, I shook. I literally shook. I had so much anxiety. I was always clenching my fists and fidgeting, and I was so dysregulated and sick all the time. And I almost, I sort of identified with that. I became that person, and I wasn't trying to be different. I was just perpetuating this frail, abused woman narrative, and that wasn't getting me anywhere.
Right. And I would guess your attorney didn't spend a lot of time preparing you, or it's our experience that you don't get, yeah.
Like you're calling and you're not getting a response. I hear it from my clients today. Like I can't, the deposition's tomorrow and I can't get them on the phone and I don't know what's going on.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
can you
we hear
imagine?
that. So what would you tell Victoria back then if you were to do it differently now with all your experience? What would you tell that scared person
Oh
that
my
was no
God,
longer
that
there?
he is nothing to be afraid of. The playing field, it's like you think they're up here and you're down here, and we're trying to go like this. So that all the work I do is trying not just to level the playing field, but to make you feel dominant in the scenario. Because you have more information, you have more knowledge, you have more ducks in a row than they have this maniacal, manipulative formula for how they're going to do things, but you see past that, you know they're coming, you know what they're going to do, they don't blindside you with it. We're prepared for it. They all do the same tactics, right? It's like
Yeah.
you don't have to be a rocket scientist to know what
Yeah.
they're going to do.
Yeah. I love to, I'm so proud of our clients when they come through the process of, we're just in the financial world, right? But when they get a little bit of knowledge and they speak from knowing rather than fear or the unknown knowing, which everyone likes to focus on the unknowns, and
Right.
we can change their vision to a more focused vision. So that fear then is just backed by data and documents, and just the way they ask for a document where they wouldn't have in the beginning. That's why I asked you, what would you tell her yourself back then? Because it's just so empowering to see women in particular. And we do have men who have narcissistic wives.
Mhm.
Like you said earlier, it's not across the board, but
Right.
primarily it is mostly women that we have experienced. But I love to see them change and transform at any age, no matter when. It's never too late to change you.
Never too late. I mean, I have clients in their 60s and 70s even.
Yeah, same. Yeah. And it's never too late and it's rewarding. You choose a life for yourself moving
Mhm.
forward, and doing it with, some financial clarity helps with the healing also emotionally.
Absolutely. And something you said reminded me of focusing on the negative. You said that focus, well, he has an account and I don't know what's in it and he hides it and I can't get my hands on it and I have no idea and how am I ever going to do this? And I can't say, okay, so what do you know, right? Is what you would say. What do you know? And what's the piece that's missing? And now let's figure out what it might be and say, okay, since you won't show it to us, we're going to impute that it could be as high as this. And now they're like, well, no, it's nowhere near that.
Hmm.
So on that note, Victoria, what help our listeners understands what recovery and life on the other side can actually look like?
Thank you for giving me that opportunity because this is my greatest joy is to be a poster child, for people who think, will I ever have a life again? Will I ever be happy again? Will I ever find love again? All these things, right? You wonder. I have the unique position of having been in a very toxic marriage and a very healthy marriage now. So I can now see the disparity and actually tell you, well, here's how it could look. This is okay. If this happened, this is what that husband would have done or said, and that's what this husband will do or say, right? So I have this huge frame of reference from every end of both ends of the spectrum. I think it gives people a lot of hope. that you can, and I had 3 children, and that was one of the main reasons, I thought this was my life and that it could never be a normal life with him in it. But my children and my husband, I didn't marry there was like a 10-year gap in between, as my mother says, between husbands, there's a 10-year gap. But my children and his children have become siblings. I mean, they are 100%, you can't convince them that they're not siblings, right? We're a family. It's an amazing, I never thought it would be this blended. We had hopes of making it good, but it's like better than most of our friends who have whole families intact, So they truly love each other. They truly love that we have this family that's safe and fun, and there's no drama, and there's no chaos, and there's no process server at the door, and there's no, like all the craziness that was my other life, not so much his, but it's gone. It's just gone. And we have a really happy, you appreciate it more almost.
Yeah. But, not to say that it wasn't a long journey and hard work to get there. It just doesn't happen overnight.
It does not. It does not. And it was also a roller coaster ride trying to blend all these kids and do what we did. And the only way it worked, I believe, is because we both made it a priority.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do it alone, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It has to be the priority for both of you to put all of the kids first. And not many people are ready to do that
Yeah. Yeah.
a second time with other kids, right?
Right. Yeah. It's hard. It's a lot of
Yeah.
work. Yeah. What is the tip that you give someone who's trying to get out of that relationship? What is the first thing that you tell them to do?
I tell them to journal, not like your thoughts and feelings so much as details of what's happening, because you will forget, your brain will block it out. So to document the abusive behaviors in a way that they can't find it, and date it so that it's contemporaneous, in the day that it happened. And also to start sniffing around for documentation because it will go missing once they know. So you have this finite amount of time to try to get things. I mean, I got very scrappy. I love telling people the stories of how I got things because it gives them, like, gets them excited to try to do things, to think out of the box. Um, I called, this was after we were divorced, actually. I called a charter company that he said he didn't have any money to pay child support and it had to be reduced and he hadn't paid it and all the things. And I knew that he was taking like a vacation every month with his girlfriend. And, they had just recently, that same, like a few months earlier, had gone to Tahiti or Tonga or some crazy place on a yacht for 2 weeks and, all this crazy stuff. So I had called the charter company that chartered the boat to them and told them that I was his secretary and that he had tasked me with rebooking the same exact trip he had just taken for next year. And I needed all the information. And they gave it to me. So, things like that.
Oh
You
my
can,
God, I did that. I found a receipt to
My gosh.
a piece of jewelry that I did not own. And it was a picture of the jewelry. And I called the jeweler acting like his sister, saying, my brother came in and bought this, blah, blah. Same thing.
like, it's not in our integrity to do that, right? We don't think
Yeah.
about lying
No,
and
I was pissed off, basically. I was, I needed to know. Like that
yeah.
was more proof.
So I encourage people to get outside of their comfort zone and do things that don't feel comfortable because you are, this is another phrase of mine. One of my mantras is you're the CEO of your life. Like you are in charge. The lawyer's not in charge. The coach isn't in charge. You are in charge of your life. You hire experts to give you advice, but ultimately you have to make the decision about what you're going to do.
Yeah. Yeah, this is great. I mean, everyone feels like in divorce, your spouse is a narcissistic spouse and they're not necessarily narcissists, but they might have narcissistic tendencies. So we totally get that. It's not an easy process. So it's really nice to know that you have a program to help people get through that, because emotionally it's really hard and it's really scary. It's not an easy thing to do. And so you should be proud of yourself if you're taking the step to get the courage that you need to make the rest of your life the best of your life. And so, Victoria, I'm glad you have that program for them. Of course, our program will help you get the financial clarity that you need. So you're not alone. You're definitely not alone out there. So, thanks for sharing that with everyone. And how can our listeners find you?
So you can find me on any social media. Just search my name, and I'm everywhere. I'm on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook. On Facebook, it's Victoria McCooey Coaching. You can email me at victoriamccooey.com, and you can go to my website, which is victoriamccooey.com.
Excellent.
So if you're navigating divorce or even just questioning your relationship and want verified numbers, expert analysis, and a clear plan before talking to your attorneys or mediators, visit mydivorcesolution.com to learn about the MDS financial portrait.
And join our MDS community. It's a free supportive space with expert guidance, resources, and live Q&A events where you can ask the questions that you always want to ask without any pressure or judgment. We'll put all of Victoria's links and resources in the show notes below. Make some comments, ask your questions. We're happy to provide you the resources that you need. And a reminder to take a breath, protect your peace, and let knowledge be your power.
Thank you again.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of We Chat Divorce. We hope this episode was informative and supportive on your divorce journey. If you're looking for more support for navigating divorce with confidence and clarity, head over to mydivorcesolution.com for more podcast episodes, divorce events, and resources for your divorce. We'll see you back here for our next episode.